Later and later and later with these early morning hours. At some point, if I don't knock it off and start getting some sleep, I'm going to be bumping up against people going to work on the day shift. Whatever. What? Whoa, where's my camera positioned at? Who cares? What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, coming back for a chat stream to finally get around to the Blizzardgate stuff that I was gonna talk about yesterday. But the Q2 2021 numbers for Streamlabs, Stream Hatchet, those quarterlies I'm always looking at as I keep an eye on the numbers that are involved with streaming and other stuff. All that kind of stuff, that came out, so stop everything to get that done and things like that. It's one of those things where, I don't know, it's just one of those nerd things that I like doing just because it's fun. I do a lot with, I'm still very much a numbers guy, very much into analytics and things along those lines, despite having not done this formally as a job for a while. Outside of all of this, I'm actually keeping an eye on the numbers related to Delta in the United States with the Delta part of the pandemic and stuff that's going on. So I was joking earlier about how it seems like the South has risen again on the COVID Act Now maps, because I think after North Carolina, if North Carolina turns red on COVID Act Now's risk maps, then basically the Delta variant will have recreated the Confederacy. Just now it's about a virus. So it's just one of those things I'm joking about. It's just one of those things I'm joking about here, because it's just like, I hear all the stuff on the news about the South, the South, the South, the South, and then I look at a map and it pretty much is the South, the old South even. So it's just crazy. And it's like, but then again, the world can be pretty crazy. And sometimes the way people are towards you can be pretty crazy as well. But throwing aside all the crap about the pandemic, and throwing aside all the crap about the numbers, and throwing aside all the crap about everything else, let's get to talking about some stuff related to Blizzardgate, quote unquote, 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 unquote. So why aren't people referring to this as Blizzardgate? Am I old? Has it really gotten to the point where people have finally gotten over this bad habit they have of calling anything controversial something gate? Why do we not? I mean, Gamergate was a thing for how long? Where's Blizzardgate? You think that something as controversial as a lawsuit in the state of California about the organizational culture and the work environment at Blizzard, alleging some pretty nasty stuff, some awful treatment of women, and all kinds of other stuff, you would think something like that, and it becoming that big of a news story, that big of an ongoing thing, you would think that something like that, of all things, would be called that. I just don't understand why. Maybe I should stop kicking against the bricks on this thing, because myself and some other cynical people out there, we actually at one point made fun of this gate thing. Like, has everyone forgotten what Watergate is? There's the word gate at the end of everything doesn't mean it's automatically a scandal. Watergate was just a hotel name. It's not any kind of like create your own words by putting gate on the other end. But I don't know. Blizzardgate, I'll keep it in quotes. And tonight's discussion is really to clear the air with the maverick position that I've taken on all of this, because I've been playing devil's advocate and getting folks unfollowing me on Twitter because I had a hot sauce opinion about stuff like this. One of those hot sauce opinions is I floated the idea that some of these commentators who are mass abandoning World of Warcraft could have done so because they're worried their views and their revenue are going to drop. That any virtue signaling or whatever it is that they're doing is just a pretext. And the pretext is that these people are basically worried about getting less popular because World of Warcraft is less popular. It's a possibility. I can believe Mad Season, for example, when he says that he had already made up his mind to quit playing WoW before he made his I'm not doing World of Warcraft anymore video. It was mostly when I encountered Preach Gaming and his discussion about how World of Warcraft videos on YouTube had turned into some kind of some kind of, it turned into a full-time job. He's been able to hire people and stuff like that. If you are that far into the business of content creation where you're supporting paychecks via whether or not your videos do well, if it doesn't look good numbers-wise, you probably want to try something else and hope it works. And this is where I took a very serious look at some of these numbers and actually saw that there's a very serious problem, there's a notable problem with the view counts. Let me see how much I can zoom in before I put it on the screen. No, the browser is going to force me to keep the window the same size. Well, over on my Twitter, twitter.com/MultimediaJay, I actually took some screenshots of the Mad Season and Preach Gaming channels. And if we look at the trends in all of them, I've got Preach Gaming on screen right now, but it's making a reference to furries. So, nah, in case of someone with kids watching, like, Mommy, what's that? But both Preach and Mad Season had their numbers drop off before the World of Warcraft goodbye videos that they had. So I posted the screenshots over on Twitter, and you know what? Let's YOLO this thing. Let's just totally YOLO it. So let me get a browser on screen here and link it up. And it's not going to link to the right browser because I've probably linked it to about 3 or 4 different browsers. Why don't we start with the original? Why don't we go back up to the original tweet? Watch what I'm clicking. That's the problem I'm running into with this mouse. It's pretty easy to go off and click on the wrong thing because it's a different shape than what I'm looking for. Women swimming, earthquake, blah, blah, blah. Let's make it nice and big and go up to the top. So here's the controversial tweet. Here's the tweet that's going to get people ticked off at me. Dear WoWtubers, you can dump the pretexts now. You're mass abandoning World of Warcraft because you're worried your views and revenue will drop when the ActiBliz scandals make the game far less popular. Have the guts to be honest about it. Blunt honesty, is something that I don't see a lot of anymore these days. And it's the sort of thing where the fear of loss leads to more loss. So if you're worried and you're blubber spine and you're trying to slither your way out of something controversial, the odds are you probably won't. The Streisand effect is a thing. People using their common sense and their brains is a thing. But yeah, WoWtubers, you can dump the pretexts. You're mass abandoning world. This is me basically playing devil's advocate here. And I think someone unfollowed me on Twitter because I decided to have this kind of a hot sauce opinion and float this idea. But this is one of the pitfalls of content creation. Drinks at the ready, as always. But this is one of those, this right here is one of those hot sauce opinions, and one of the problems with content creation is because when numbers are involved, there's always a possibility that something somebody is doing is about the numbers. And if you look at some of these numbers that are related to some of these folks, like here's Preach's channel. Haha, look, furry daddy milkers. What the heck is that? Some kind of drama time thing that he did. But hey, if he can have that in his thumbnail. So look at these numbers here. We're going backwards from his goodbye video at 203 grand. 23K, 54K, 60, 76, 23, 71, 54, 31, 44, 70, 59, 107,000 views. Final Fantasy. 32, 29, 56, 63, 64, 54, 27, 45, 106. So a collab. A collab about an upcoming World of Warcraft patch. Put him over 100 grand. So is he going to do collabs all the time? Because look at how much weight, or lack thereof, his WoW videos have been pulling. 61, 39, 82, 18K, 46, 351K when it's Final Fantasy. What more do we need to say about this? Same thing happened to Asmongold. He was 30,000, 40,000, doing his thing in WoW. Cracked the 100 grand mark, and he's been higher ever since. Let's actually check his Sully Gnomes right now. SullyGnome.com, look up Asmongold. Sully Gnome, how's Asmongold been doing? Well, no, we don't need that. What we need is Asmongold, the pie chart by game. Set it to 180 days. I know. Let's do past 365 days. Actually, there might be too many games if we do that. Ashes of Creation, Diablo 2, down to 180, please. There's some bigger pieces of the pie. But 180 days. How about we give, let's give it 180 days. Let's see. Can I get this game average viewers expand? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So here's Asmongold, game average viewers over the last 180 days. Look at the two big MMOs here. Final Fantasy, average of 97,000 concurrents to World of Warcraft's 48,798. Some of that is a summer fad, but the rest of it is just people being disgruntled about all of this. So here's the thing with this whole WoW-tubers, you can dump the pretext, blah, blah, blah. Even if I'm correct, and there is a commentator out there somewhere who is lying about why they're leaving World of Warcraft in their videos, even if I'm correct and this devil's advocate opinion is actually happening somewhere out there, this still is a Blizzard problem. And probably one of the most radical things that I can say with regards to all of this nonsense with either the lawsuit, the culture at Blizzard that needs to change, the way Blizzard has treated their employees, the way gaming is a not very glamorous field to work in, with things like scrum time and development and what it's like when a big release is coming up, the kind of unhealthy energy drink fueled lifestyles that people get away with in their 20s that will clobber them in their 30s and 40s if they don't start living healthier. So can you even stay in the industry once you turn 30? And if you're putting in all these hours and running yourself on very little sleep and stuff like that. So all this stuff that's going on and whatnot, despite any of this, if this idea is correct, it's still a Blizzard problem. And you know what's sad? I can tell you, as somebody that has been following World of Warcraft and playing it mostly since 06, another one of those old timers who's seen this game through its ups and downs, I can tell you that as nuts as it is, as terrible as these allegations are with Blizzard, it is a symptom, not the problem. We are shocked because this popped up in the lawsuit material. We are shocked because the lid's been blown on this. But if you think about the way that Blizzard and their head honchos have behaved, it's not that far-fetched. You're talking about a terrible work environment, treats women poorly, and does all kinds of awful stuff to employees, to the point where there was, 1,000 people on that thing, even though the leadership is calling in third-party legal auditors to go over all the processing and stuff, all their processes and stuff like that. Bobby Kotick had a lower the boom kind of letter, which I give him a thumbs up for, but I've seen these before. It's the kind of corporate response where you would wonder if something was wrong if he didn't do something like that. But you have this stuff going on here. I mean, yeah, it was cool that he did that. However, nothing I haven't really seen before. So, with regards to all of this, it's a symptom, not the problem. It's like I said, it's like shock humor. We're not upset because of the idea. We're upset that someone did it. We can probably imagine how sick and twisted people are that this could have been a possibility. What shocks us is that someone did it. Someone told the joke. Someone did the deed. Somebody tried something that, with how crazy people can get, should not surprise us. And even if it doesn't, it's still something terrible. It's still something that takes a chunk out of your faith in humanity. You wonder if people can even keep their heads together when people are acting like this. But look at the history of Blizzard. If I just have to go to my own YouTube channel, search for the hashtag BlizzyKnowsBest. Look at my commentaries about the development of Shadowlands, about the state of BFA, about Blizzard's hubris over the years. And this goes back a very long way for me. One of the earliest high-profile, besides the whining about, oh, we can't ever balance the classes in vanilla, that was all over the forums back then. One of the first high-profile incidents that I remember Blizzard being arrogant about something until it came back to bite them was something that is a standard feature of the game nowadays. But people had to argue, and the devs were like, no, I don't think so, until they finally caved and put it in the game. And that was free spell damage for healers in Burning Crusade. Around the time of Burning Crusade, there was a difference between caster damage gear and caster healer gear. And so it was not uncommon, if you were involved with people that were raiding at the time, to find out that one of your friends playing the game, remember back when we had friends playing this game before it became all pugs and LFR and all that other crap? WoW tokens, woo! I'm not going to bash on WoW tokens, though, because the gem store in Guild Wars 2 is what the WoW token is, and it predates the WoW token by years. So there already was an online RPG experimenting with this idea before Blizzard did it. One of many times when Blizzard sheepishly implements a good idea from another game, but they find some way to make it worse. Because, I can't remember, are there character boosts in Guild Wars 2? I don't think there are. I think it's mostly cosmetic stuff or little style items, things like that. ArenaNet was very strict about not wanting to turn Guild Wars 2 into a pay-to-win game, because people call out pay-to-win games because people aren't idiots. They'll spot when you're making an RPG that has something in common with a crappy Facebook game from 10 years ago. They'll spot that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. I ran it with Farmville. Was there a Treasure Hunter one? The old Zynga games where you could kind of play the game, but the only way to really play the game was to keep buying microtransactions and throwing money for... You could brag in a Facebook post about you raised 3 cows in Farmville or something. Yeah, people can spot that crap from a mile away. Anyways, free spell damage for healers. One of the first times that I saw this pattern that I've come to associate with Blizzy Knows Best, Blizzard developers, aka developers that are arrogant and wag their finger at paying customers about why good ideas that exist anywhere else other than WoW can't come to WoW until they finally cave and bring it to the game. So I remember back in the day when friends were more of a thing in this game, there were people that, for example, that would play a holy priest and heal raids, and they would do absolutely nothing with the holy priest because they played a rogue ult for literally everything else in the game because their gear was 100% for healing. They had terrible damage. They didn't want to wait forever to do daily quests, so they had a rogue for literally the entire rest of the game, and they raided on their holy priest. And you know what? I knew the opposite of this too. There was a guy I did dungeons with, arenas with even. He was younger than me, but he was pretty good at playing a rogue. We did 2s with Holy Paladin and some kind of rogue, probably think assassination rogue or something, because he always complained about how his daggers weren't good versus warriors or something. But he actually played a rogue and loved playing rogue, loved DPSing, could never be a DPS in a raid. And he created a Holy Paladin from scratch and got boost leveled, so to speak, through dungeons and stuff by his guildmates, specifically to heal as a heal-it-in in raids. He didn't want to do anything else with the character and never did anything else with the character. If you ever saw his Paladin logged in, it was probably raid night because of this difference between spell damage and healing. So, what was going on at the time? Especially when rep paladins were annoyed by it being broken and the know-it-all WoW developers saying things like, well, retribution is your soloing and leveling tree. It's not meant to be anything serious. Yeah, well, while all of that was going on, Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning was becoming a thing, and guess how the folks hyping up that game were hyping up the game? They were taking pot shots at World of Warcraft. One of the ways they were doing that was, and I have this in my classic YouTube playlist, by the way, over on this channel. Look in the classic YouTube playlist for the one and only video that's in there about Warhammer. The infamous, it was a meme back in 2007. The guy, the developer who was talking about the warrior priest. The warrior priest was supposed to be what rep paladins really should have been like. People that could heal while fighting. So, and they swung a big hammer and stuff along those lines. But there was a very quoted part of this guy's discussion where he was saying, there are no namby-pamby healer-only classes in Warhammer. Everybody fights. Everybody makes a glorious attempt at smashing the crap out of each other. There is no sitting in the back going, and I heal, and I heal, and I heal, because it's boring. If you want to play a healer, sorry, this game is not for you. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, so I hate this game because it has no healers. Go away. We're not the game for you. So, we know that Warhammer turned out to be more hype and whatnot. It wasn't very polished upon release. I tried it. I actually have a physical copy of this defunct MMO because it was one of those WoW killers that everyone got into if they were upset with WoW for some reason. However, when the idea of healers doing what we now would call token damage to not be completely useless outside of being someone's heal bot running around healing them all the time and never actually doing anything in the fights besides waiting for people to get hurt, the devs on the forums and the Blizzy Knows Best crowd was like, well, this sounds like that might work in that game, but it's not going to work in our game. Here's why, blah, 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 round in circles, always this big, roundabout, run-around discussion about how why something that was going to work in, something that worked in that game wouldn't work in our game. Until they caved and put it in there. There's a Burning Crusade patch, finally, put in free spell damage for healers. So whereas the caster damage gear was 50-50, the healing gear was now 75-25. So the caster damage gear was still worth getting if you wanted to do more damage, but the healers wouldn't be completely useless outside of following someone around and healing them everywhere in the game. And there were people playing the game in the early days of WoW that did precisely that. I called them statue priests in vanilla, not classic. Because in order to conserve their mana, unless they brought a wand with them, they would literally just stand there and do nothing because they didn't want to waste any mana, and they were waiting for someone to finally take some damage so they could heal them. And they didn't ever want to run out of mana because they didn't want people dying and whatnot, and running out of mana was this extinction level event and whatnot. And well, the attitude was there for a while, and then it went away until the healer nerfs in Cataclysm, but that's another discussion. But yeah, free spell damage for healers. Such a simple idea. Let people who specialize in defensive magic throw some offensive magic around to not have the most worthless spells in the world. It was a back and forth thing. And this is the 2000s we're talking about here. And this is the pattern. I saw it first with this. But this is the pattern that would show up in all kinds of discussions about World of Warcraft years down the road. The exact same pattern. The arrogance that the devs would show until they started hiring all these community managers to insulate themselves from the players who were criticizing them. How's that? Oh, yeah. Talk to the hand. Except in this case, the hand is some CM who doesn't actually work on the game. One of the reasons why people got involved in the forums in their earlier days was because of the direct discussion with the devs about how the game was going. But when the bureaucracy was created to insulate the devs from the players playing the game, and now you see today, you got folks like Asmongold out there talking about WoW devs don't seem to play their own game anymore, otherwise they'd behave differently. Well, yeah, that insulation from the player base began a long time ago. And this pattern of arrogance and antagonism towards their own players would show up in discussions about something that was nerfed, something that was buffed, whether flight should be in the game in Warlords of Draenor, some controversial thing in Mists of Pandaria that nobody even remembers anymore because everybody went from making fun of Mists of Pandaria to liking it and actually considering it a good expansion because of Warlords coming after it. But time and again, if you've been around the block on the WoW forums, or even seeing some of the snarky responses from developer interviews or stuff at BlizzCon that made, highlights from BlizzCon on YouTube and whatnot, what you've seen in the developer team at Blizzard was this constant arrogance towards their own customers. And you figure, if they treat their customers like that, what's stopping them from having terrible stuff going on in the workplace? That's the thing. Is it really a surprise that all this stuff came out, and now people have what's called cognitive dissonance, the weird feeling you get in your head when something you internally believe conflicts with something you're externally experiencing. How have I had this much fun with this game over the years despite its problems, and then find out the devs were total jerks? It's just something, something terrible that they got to sort out. Let's take a look at the Mad Season channel and take a look at that pattern I was talking about earlier. He made his decision to leave, supposedly, but you could be devil's advocate and say there were numbers involved in that too. Here's Mad Season's back catalog. Here's his goodbye video. Took a picture of this earlier. $768,000 for the goodbye video, so we know it's higher for that. The fun part with Mad Season is that he's been focusing on Classic, which has traditionally been the stronger product, until, of course, Burning Crusade Classic got the boost, and now the old world is empty. But I don't know, that's not too far off from the way the real Burning Crusade went. More on that later. Look at these numbers. $768,000. Let's look at all the Ks here. 87, 53, 53, 55, 189 for a starter guide for fresh level 70s. 84, 166, 253. So we see things stay above 100 more consistently because he didn't post as much. He's one of those people that spends a ton of time making a video, but it's very well produced. So it's like Greenham Gaming, but with World of Warcraft. So there will be some serious production value, and you can tell that his videos took a very long time to make. But Burning Crusade Classic represents the last real surge in WoW popularity as the retail product continued to struggle. And then we get like a month ago, once the initial thing with BCC was starting to die down, you now start to see him dip below $100,000, except for this thing for level 70s, which topically will just be more popular because there's probably more level 70s looking for a starter guide than somebody running the Blood Furnace Heroic. But you see that once the popularity drops off, you start seeing him actually have videos that don't even hit 100,000 views. So this is all part of that devil's advocate argument that I mentioned earlier, that perhaps some of these people who are leaving in light of Blizzardgate, or around the same time as Blizzardgate, as I want to call it, perhaps some of these WoW tubers are creating a pretext. They're leaving covering WoW because they're worried about views and revenue dropping. But here's the thing. Views and revenue, besides being, let's see here, the sort of thing that, besides being what they are, yay, money, yay, people actually watch what I do and I'm not wasting my time making this stuff. Besides all of that, though, it reflects back on Blizzard and the state of the game. Let's suppose that Blizzard made things right. That it came out from the court case, You know what, let's tie up the loose end with Burning Crusade. Let's suppose it came out with the court case that, everything happened, blah, 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 and there was damages paid out, and there's all kinds of other things. Blizzard had to turn over a new leaf. Even if they resolved everything that led to the scandals, they still would have to figure out what to do about their darn product and all the wrong turns it's taken over the last several years. But anyways, Burning Crusade. Just one little note on Burning Crusade before we move on from this. Mad Season's talking about, and Asmongold too, are talking about the boost and nobody's in the old world except Draenei and Blood Elves. This was a pattern with the real expansions too. It didn't take a boost to do this. It's a side effect of World of Warcraft's persistent, perennial problems with what they call expansion packs. And the expansion comes out, it doesn't really expand the game. It just replaces what the focus is. So when Burning Crusade came out, the whole overworld, except for the new zones for leveling Blood Elves and Draenei, suddenly lost focus compared to Outland. And when Lich King came out, the whole focus of Outland lost focus in favor of Northrend, except for a few niche things. So in the old world, you would see largely things to be empty, even the cities, because everybody was in Shatrath once everyone got over to Shatrath. They would only come back for, like, I think the auction house or something. Most of the time, you could do everything in Shatrath unless you needed something very specifically in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. But one of the things that happened, of course, was the old world emptied out. This is before cross-realm zones, so if you weren't on a high-pop server, good luck finding people in those old world zones while everybody else was out tearing up Outland. And if you did, they probably were a Draenei or a Blood Elf that was being leveled up, because there were no heirlooms back then. This situation where the world is almost empty, that the boost allegedly created, did not need the boost to exist in its original run. And then how about what happened to Outland after Northrend came out with Lich King? When Outland was where you would find all the Death Knights. Because the Death Knight story didn't make any sense. You would, you'd want to go fight the Lich King, but you had to get stronger. So the way you got stronger was to run off to Outland. So you go to Hellfire Peninsula and early Lich King, and it would be all Death Knights hanging out in Honorhold and Thrallmar because everybody was in Northrend. So the situation that the boost has created in Burning Crusade Classic, where everyone's skipping to level 58 because they'd rather just buy the boost, or hey, maybe Blizzard could throw in a free boost at some point for people getting into BCC so that people will go in specifically for Outland. So it's not the best setup in the world, but it is somewhat accurate because Draenei and Blood Elves were the ones that were leveling in you could find in the old world in the original run. And then you have what happened with Lich King, where Outland was Death Knight Central. So your badass looking Death Knight that came out of Acheris, the Ebb and Hold, would wind up looking like they're wearing clown armor by the time they were at level 68 and about to go to Northrend and play the real story. So kind of a stupid design choice, but Blizzard and stupid design choices, what? Yeah, what can we say to that? So now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the fact that I look like a villain because I unsubbed from Final Fantasy XIV and resubbed to World of Warcraft in the middle of these scandals. So first off, we mentioned this before. Blizzard's not ahead of the game by me sending a sub fee or two their way and maybe a boost for my Paladin and Burning Crusade Classic. They're not catching up on things. I do not play World of Warcraft regularly anymore, and there's a very good reason for that. That reason is the game that is my main game, Elder Scrolls Online. Matter of fact, I was playing ESO while I was watching the last round of videos before coming onto the stream, and it's one of the reasons why I was late. Wanted to see what people had to say and play some ESO at the same time, run some of my alts through some of the quests and things like that. Mostly the main quests in all the zones. This is a little off, isn't it? I want to go through mostly vitamins. Woohoo! Take your vitamins, people. Anyways, Final Fantasy XIV. It's hiding, isn't it? But I wanted to catch up on what everybody was saying about all this, so I'm actually playing through alts with the volume all the way down, going through stuff I've done before in ESO, getting quests over with, because the main quests in ESO give you skill points. A lot of my alts are missing skill points for getting as many skills as my main, so that's the sort of thing I'm doing when I'm playing not too seriously in these MMOs, right? Turn the volume down and listen to something on screen number 2, or watch it or whatever. Hey, if you're good enough, you can do back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and still keep an eye on your character while you're watching a YouTube video. It's like the old joke about bad healers in WoW that were watching TV while they were healing, because healing was so dumb in World of Warcraft at one point. You just spam a button if you played the right class. So yeah, flash of light, you play a paladin, for example, flash of light, flash of light, flash of light while watching TV. We would often blame if the group wiped and the healer was all happy-go-lucky. Be like, oh yeah, that's another healer that's watching TV. So, but Blizzard, my main game is ESO. My main game is ESO. That's the MMO that I've been subbed to consistently for the past 5+ years. It usurped World of Warcraft, quite frankly, because the dev team has a far superior attitude towards their players and whatnot. And you run into that too. Whoever dominates the industry, or whoever thinks they've earned a right to coast, is going to have a bad attitude, and you're going to see bad stuff happen with them. Kind of like what we've seen with Blizzard. Once upon a time, World of Warcraft was the most successful MMO in existence. 12 million subscribers. They were running an ad campaign with celebrities. Mr. T was in a commercial. William Shatner was in a commercial. There even was a Paladin commercial with some dude from Spain or something like that. Forgot who he was. But people were making parodies. I even actually thought about making a Shockadin parody at one point. I'm MultimediaJay, and I play a Shockadin. What's your game? WorldofWarcraft.com. I totally thought about doing that at one point. I absolutely thought about doing that at one point. But yeah, World of Warcraft used to have celebrity endorsements. It became a mainstream cultural phenomenon at one point, and peaked at about 12 million subs. So All that success, you can imagine, would get to some people's heads, but the arrogance that was showing up in the forums was happening before then. The arrogance that was showing up in the forums was happening before then. So by the time ESO started getting its act together and becoming an MMO based on a strong IP, which a lot of the WoW killers didn't previously have, by the time ESO was getting its stuff together and Final Fantasy XIV was getting its stuff together, the industry was changing. But before all that, there was WoW, like I've said so many times in this and many videos going back many, many years. There used to be a world of MMOs where it was WoW and everybody who wanted to be WoW. Every MMO that came out in some way was a WoW clone. People weren't really trying their own thing. Guild Wars 2 tried to do something a little differently, but even Guild Wars 2 was a response to World of Warcraft because Guild Wars games are often anti-MMOs. The original Guild Wars, response to the EverQuest generation of games. Guild Wars 2, response to WoW. There's probably, I don't know if there will be another Guild Wars, but, you know, I'm very curious what it would be a response to. Would it be a response to the modern transaction strangled WoW that we know today? Where, you know, and they try to not do things through a bazillion microtransactions and things that, you know, make an RPG crossover with a crappy Facebook game from 10 years ago. You know, what about that? And it's just, I think mobile apps do that too, but yeah, so, and people are constantly questioning the ethics of the dev team and whether or not they should even still be making games, and should the company just turn over a new leaf and fire everybody. It's, yeah. But yeah, ESO, that's my game. That's the one I've been subbed to, and I've kept the sub going even when I haven't been playing it because of the crown store. You get free crowns that you can use to buy stuff that build up as you're away from the game. Took a break to play Guild Wars 2, took a break to play some Final Fantasy, some WoW, came back and bought a castle. That's ESO for you. You know, and come back and buy a castle. That's ESO, plus the endless craft bag and all kinds of other stuff. So I figure, hey, it's like my second MMO when I'm not playing it, but I never canceled the sub. Versus the breaks that I've taken from WoW going all the way back to the beginning. Usually when the game was dull or boring, or I was flat out insulted by some of the stuff the devs were doing. So, Blizzard is not catching up with me checking out WoW in the stunted state that it is in right now as a very chill game that not a lot of people are still playing, because a lot of people that are very emotional and make snap judgments and have already served as judge, jury, and executioner over on Twitter have stormed away from the game and are encouraging others to do likewise. So everybody that follows in their example is going to storm off to Final Fantasy or something, and WoW is going to be a very quiet place with less drama than I've ever seen from it. I've always associated WoW with at least a little bit of drama. It can be a kid's game. It can be a game for people that want to have pretty elf princess characters, but they're really emotional and flip out over the dumbest things. You know, I often wonder sometimes, especially back in the days when WoW was being played by emo kids, you know, little emo kids that got mad at like, oh, this person's ninja looting. Back in the days when, you know, WoW, I thought WoW is, you know, when WoW was played by emo kids, I often wondered how many of the guys, let's face it, there's gender pretenders in MMOs. There's people role-playing as, you know, there's guys role-playing as gals, da-da-da-da-da. It's been a thing. Moonguard's been a thing. Folks, let's stop pretending that this has never been a thing, because I'm sure it has. Oh, why might he be so sure about that? I mean, it's been an MMO champion and stuff. Dan, what's up? WoW played by emo kids. Yeah, that's back in the day, all right. Actually, I think there used to be PvP videos that were always like Crybaby Rock and whatnot for the soundtrack and stuff. Because Saga actually was one of the Shockadins that inspired me back in the 2000s. He would spec Holy and get like $3,000 Holy Shocks, like boom, do PvP videos. They used to be on WarcraftVids.com, not even YouTube back then. Probably wouldn't fly on YouTube in those days because of the copyright side of it. But the thing is, back when WoW was played with by emo kids back in the day, I often wondered if maybe some guy got dumped by his girlfriend, and the female night elf hunter with the whiny panther pet that he played in World of Warcraft and did like crap DPS or something because he couldn't stop gawking at his tune. I often wonder if someone got dumped by their girlfriend and then kind of sort of as some kind of psychological way of feeling better about getting dumped, they made their WoW character just like their ex or something. Look, it's weird, it's bizarre, but I'm telling you, people are weird and bizarre. If you can think of it, somebody out there is probably trying to do it, or they've done it. So that was something I thought about a lot back in those days. But in today's world, Blizzard is not getting ahead by me deciding to check out a game that inadvertently has been made into the chillest MMO experience out there. And let's talk about this stuff for a second. I didn't play hardly any of BFA. I, up until this point, had never played Shadowlands. So I can keep myself busy for a month or two sub fees or whatnot, playing through the story to max level in Shadowlands. Unfortunately, I found out that Blizzard nerfed the ability to solo old content, so I don't even know if I'll be able to unlock the Cultirans without trying to put together a group of some sort by soloing the dungeons and raids part of BFA after hitting level 60 and maybe getting some gear or something. If I hit a snag on that, because there's some alts I wanted to make who are Cultirans. I want to make a priest and a monk who are Cultirans, but I didn't play BFA, so I wasn't around for the stuff I could queue for in Dungeon Finder. The only way I can queue for that stuff in Dungeon Finder is to have another character play BFA and lock their level at 50 so they can access the Dungeon Finder, or 49. Can you do that, I think? I gotta check that. If you're level 50, can you still access BFA in the Dungeon Finder and Raid Finder? And does that even still work with the old raids? Yeah, lock your level. I know. But if I hit a snag on that, then I'll go back to ESO. ESO Blackwood is out. There's a lot of parts of the game that I haven't 100% completed it. There's lots of stuff I can do in ESO. Guild Wars 2 is getting a DirectX 11 beta, so finally some support for newer DirectX. So maybe I can actually get 1080-60 in Guild Wars 2 at some point. It's the only MMO that I have right now that can't reliably do it. Not even at medium settings. Not even by lowering the settings. So my involvement in WoW and resubbing to it in the middle of these scandals is more an unintended consequence of seeing all these people flipping out, storming away from Blizzard, and I'm like, the drama people have left the building. Let's enjoy a nice, chill WoW experience and play some catch-up on things, because I haven't been playing much. You know, Blizzard has not made a mint off of me with all this crap that's been going on with Shadowlands and their design choices that came up short. You know, with all the talk about Shadowlands, you think Blizzard got their act together and they were going to modernize their game so that it could be something like Guild Wars 2 or ESO or even Star Wars The Old Republic, where your expansion packs would stop replacing the game and start actually expanding the world that you play in. But that didn't happen. Chromie Time turned into a thing that's only good up to level 49, and you get booted out of it when you get to level 50. You can't turn on. This should have been Time Walker mode. Blizzard has the technology, but their arrogance won't let them put 2 and 2 together and come up with a mode you can turn on so that you can go play old expansions and experience the stories or stuff you missed if you're a newer player. And, you know, you can't go back and do that without it being, like, boring because you're one-shotting everything. But with the new setup, you go 1 to 10, and then 10 to 50 is your level up expansion. What if you level up in Wrath of the Lich King, but you want to go see Burning Crusade? You either freeze your level and don't progress into the Shadowland. You have no option. You have to freeze your level at level 49. You can't even go to 50 in that case. But this is something I talked about before the game even launched. Time Walker mode. They could even have made Classic mode back when people were complaining about how much modern features of WoW should exist in Classic. They could have remade it through something you switch over to through the Bronze Dragonflight in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. And that would be your way of playing the old world with modern amenities so that Classic could be Classic. There could be a dungeon fighter and stuff. Well, with Burning Crusade, that exists right now. That dichotomy exists. You can play BCC in its state, despite its boosts and everything, or you can actually go play Burning Crusade on the retail WoW and have Dungeon Finder and all the modern amenities. You have that choice. You didn't have it for the old world. You didn't have it for Classic. And as soon as, now we gotta wait for the nostalgia cycles to kick in where people might actually get curious about the 1 to 60 experience again. Not going to be anytime soon because everyone's doing BC right now. I don't even think it's going to be a thing until maybe after Wrath Classic. But when people start getting curious again about the 1 to 60 thing, and they all go back and just have a nostalgia trip and the classic era servers actually get repopulated or something, then until that happens, this is like but yeah, so over on the retail client, they could have made it to where World of Warcraft had some kind of competitiveness with ESO, and they blew it. Blizzard talked about player agency, but that's not player freedom. Once again, it takes a long time for a good idea in other games to meander its way into WoW, but the Blizzard devs, in their infinite arrogance, find a way to make it worse. Just like what happened with spell damage for healers in Burning Crusade. And everything else that has fit this template over the years, because quite frankly, people are predictable. If someone's arrogant, that's their personality, guess what you're going to see from them? So yeah, Blizzard's not gaining anything from me resubbing, and me resubbing in the middle of the scandals is basically, you know, it's an unintended consequence, but it's a curiosity, a very nerdy curiosity of mine, but a lot of my focus is on old stuff. I'm an altaholic mostly. I'm not really so sure I want to get involved in the time sinks and the throttled gameplay that Blizzard has been infamous for with BFA and Shadowlands. I think I just want to play through the stories. Play through the stories I didn't see. Then grab another character, freeze their level, and be able to play WoW like it's ESO. I'm thinking the Alex Straza server, where I initially started WoW 15 plus years ago. I'm thinking I have that gaming video on my channel, back to the beginning, the return of Goodman, because that was my first character's name, was Goodman on Alex Straza. So, 2000s, we're going way back for that one. But I actually recreated that character. I recreated Lockhart as a priest, and I've got Darth Goodman, my Death Knight, who's been there keeping an eye on the server to see if anybody I remember from many, 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 many years ago was even still playing. You know, would they pop up in Stormwind or something at the auction house or something? And every so often I'll be like, hey, let's go back and see if Alex Straza's still a drama-infested mess. I don't think it is anymore, but all this stuff is probably moot nowadays because of cross-realm zones. You can basically have problems with anybody from any server. But what I'm thinking of doing is Terralion, my main Alliance server, will be for characters that will progress into the Shadowlands. Characters I'll play the normal way. Everybody that's on Alex Straza will be locked at 49 until Blizzard learns about how to create an MMO that competes with the Elder Scrolls Onlines of the world by offering actual player freedom instead of this Blizzard stamped of approval player agency, which is a crappy knockoff of it as far as I'm concerned. If I get sick of Shadowlands, especially if I'm grinding at max level, and I want to have a nostalgia trip through some dailies in Burning Crusade, I want to be able to do that without it being a boring one-shot fest, and I want to be in a different phase. Chromie Time does that up until level 49, and then you're kicked out of it. Well, I got news for Blizzard. They introduced this leveling expansion idea with Shadowlands. There is no way that newer players to the game, however few there have been with all the crap going on, there is no way that newer players to the game haven't had this pop up in their head. That maybe they played through Lich King as their leveling expansion, but they don't want to re-roll and they want to go experience the Miss of Pandaria story. But they can't if they started Shadowlands. That's WoW's level 49 problem. Talked about that before Shadowlands launched. There are 2 games in WoW, and you have to freeze your level if you don't want to go from one to the other. 1 through 49, and literally everything after that. So, I will have characters that will be frozen at 49 when they get there, and they'll be in Chromie Time forever until Blizzard learns that, hey, they should expand that to the entire game, make it Time Walker mode, and have people be able to toggle it on and off. Not to be confused with the Time Walking dungeon events and things like that, but if you freeze a character at 49, you can basically change your expansion to change the dungeons you use Dungeon Finder for anyways. So, it's stupid. Just enough, Blizzard. Enough already. Expand Chromie Time to Time Walker mode and have World of Warcraft actually be better than the other games they're forced down leveling, because you can turn it on and off. If you want to farm mats or mounts or things like that, You want to do that kind of stuff? Go into max level mode and one-shot everything. Bring back the damage bonus for soloing old raids, which I heard has gotten nerfed because of the level squish. Get it to where you can go run some old raid, solo it, down the boss in 5 seconds, because it doesn't matter. You're way past the level range for it. But also have the option of turning on that sort of thing if you want to make like a retro raid guild like has previously existed. Like level 70 guilds in Lich King. Just all these ideas, but because the players would thought of it instead of the brass in their ivory towers at Blizzard, it's gonna be an argument. Round and round and round we go. Round and round and round we go. Run around, run around, run around. All this finger wagging about how you players, darn it, that will not work in our game, and we'll give you this big long explanation on MMO Champion as to why it's not gonna work until they cave and put it in anyways and find a way to make it worse. Spare me. Just spare me. Just spare me the nonsense already. Ugh. Yeah, that's right. I gotta go to Walmart and pick up new pictures to put this stuff in. Yeah. So, half empty. Been staying hydrated at least as we approach the hour mark here. But yeah, so yeah, me resubbing to WoW for this, curiosities, and I'm mostly interested in old stuff. I'm definitely not going to become a progression player. I don't even still have any friends playing this game anymore. Not that I'm in any rush to have any. I've got so much stuff to do on my own with leveling alts and stuff like that I could theoretically go through. I'm probably far enough removed from certain stories that I could go back to some expansion packs and experience the stories again. And if you install the storyline add-on, that turns the WoW little pop-up of quest text into actual dialogue. So it kind of resembles Final Fantasy in a sense. With the storyline add-on. One of my favorite add-ons of all time, by the way, makes WoW actually feel like an RPG. One of the few ways to actually read the quest text is to have it actually be the dialogue it was originally intended to be in this game. Hey, more Blizzard hubris, by the way. Why isn't there an option to have something like storyline as a baseline UI feature that you can turn on? So like classic quest text versus dialogue quest text. Or do people really enjoy the little thing popping up on the screen like it did in 2004? And maybe if you slow it down, you'll hear the little ink quill pen noise, and the text slowly appears as if anybody's going to read it like that. Give me a break. Now, we've talked about me getting back into WoW during the controversies. Let's talk about me canceling my sub to Final Fantasy XIV. Why the heck did I do that? Well, for one thing, I'm stuck on the main story quest. I need to do a dungeon run in the drowned city of Scala, and the last dungeon run that I ran was a total disaster. So a lot of the drama that I used to associate with WoW groups is now in Final Fantasy, and it was there even before the little fad that's going on this summer where everybody wants to try it because they think WoW sucks. So it's just, and these have happened before, by the way. This is just the first one with a major scandal kind of powering it here, as well as, the crap with Shadowlands and all the other stuff. But this has happened before. People are mad at Blizzard, and suddenly Final Fantasy is the greatest game ever, even though it's not. No, seriously. Final Fantasy XIV, my OG 1.0 copy of it. Half-dead router there, too. Boom. I played the original game. I built a computer I didn't need to build because of the original game. And checked out A Realm Reborn and everything that's come out. It's not one of those games I've stayed with, just like WoW. It's not one of those games that I have persistently stayed with because of the issues that it has, because a lot of the devs are inspired by Blizzard, so there shouldn't be any surprise that Final Fantasy is more similar to what World of Warcraft's like. There's a lot of things that Final Fantasy does incredibly well, especially its ties to its source material. But as an MMO, when I run into situations where people are fanboying Final Fantasy to pretend there's nothing wrong with it because they don't want to feel like they wasted their time getting away from WoW, that causes problems. So I'm stuck in the MSQ. I would have to go in as DPS in order to not risk getting yelled at for tanking and healing. So that means level up Red Mage or play Summoner to get through the dungeon. I could just go Summoner for all I know. I play a Scholar for healing. So I play a Scholar for healing, And because I have more experience on the WoW side of things with disciplined priests than holy priests, so the idea of a caster that alternates heals and shielding spells is something that I don't have a problem with. But plus, the fairy does off healing on the side and things like that, and they fixed the Elune versus Eos thing and stuff along those lines. But the thing is, I don't really want to be hassled with the traditional everything's always the healer's fault thing, so could go summoner and go DPS and whatnot, but that's my only way to progress through MSQ to unlock Shadowlands without buying, or Shadowbringers without buying a boost, and I don't want to be buying any boosts. I want to actually experience the story because Final Fantasy is really good at that. So, you know, I have stunted progression to MSQ. And even when I got to Shadowbringers, I wanted to just experiment with the system where the lore characters could accompany you into dungeons anyway. So I don't really have friends in that game. Not so sure I'd be friends with anybody anytime soon in that game anyways. The culture of, you know, bunch of dancing cat people in Limsa Laminza isn't really my sort of thing. Matter of fact, my character looks very, very Western. Looks like he's from the wrong game. He's a Highlander and he looks like a sea captain. Kind of looks like, you know, wearing like bicorn hat and stuff like that. Well, some of you folks may have seen the screenshot. I probably have it on Twitter buried somewhere. This is why I have to get Imager up and running as kind of like a pictures thing, so I can just bring that up so you don't have to sift through tweets to find pictures and stuff like that. But yeah, the thing with Final Fantasy, though, is because of all these people coming over, not only are they going to bring the drama and baggage with them, they're going to bring server queues. Yoshida has actually done a little something or another talking about how they're having problems upgrading their servers because of electronic shortages, the ones we're all familiar with right now. So every single time I've played Final Fantasy, including during off hours like right now, there has been a server queue. And you know what? I have jumped on my soapbox so many times about World of Warcraft server queues at game launches, expansion launches, and major patches, that I just don't want to be sitting through any queues anymore. I don't sit through queues with ESO. Maybe the login system gets slammed, and that's like 10 seconds or so. But the best game is actually Guild Wars 2, where if there ever were enough people that had a server queue, you got sent into an overflow realm, so you could play the game with some limited features, like in the overworld and stuff, until your turn popped up, and then your choices were to enter the game or stay in the overflow world. So yeah, they generate an extra overflow realm on the spot, and you'd play with everybody else that was in the queue, instead of just sitting there like WoW often does whenever a server is completely slammed. So you start logging in, and an hour later, if you don't get disconnected, you can play the game. I hated that in Vanilla. I hated that in Burning Crusade. I hated that in Wrath of the Lich King. I hated that in Cataclysm. I hated that in Mists of Pandaria. I hated that in Warlords of Draenor. I don't think I encountered that in Legion. The decline had gotten to the point where, you know, it's starting to kick in by then. But I hate server queues of any kind, any shape, any size, because the technology has existed for just shy of a decade for them to be rendered obsolete. Guild Wars 2 came out in 2012. Yeah. Doesn't need to be a thing anymore. They're infrastructure tech solutions to the queues problem. So yeah, server queues, drama, because I know a lot of the people playing Final Fantasy now are disgruntled WoW players, and just a culture that is overly sensitive. It's the Alliance on steroids. If anybody remembers the problem the Alliance had in Vanilla, all the prettier characters were on the Alliance versus Orc, Trolls, Tauren, Undead. And so there was problems when Blood Elves were added to the Horde, because people were like, oh, all the Horde players are going to, now there's going to be drama on the Horde because people are going to make Elf Princesses Horde side too, not just Night Elf whatever, you know, and someone whining about something, maybe loot or someone blah, blah, blah. That's just the, you know, teen narcissism expressed through MMOs. I don't know about you, but I am long removed from high school, and I don't want to be reminded of the drama. I don't want to be reminded of those knockout cheerleaders that looked gorgeous and wanted eyes on them and got a lot of attention from guys, but started drama with each other on purpose to get more eyes on them because they wanted all the attention. Yeah, I'm not in. I've grown past that. I am long past that. I don't want to be reminded of it. So Final Fantasy, it has its shortcomings. It has its shortcomings in design, too. So, how about playing in Stormblood, and because of the limitations of the swimming system that was added to the game, you're fighting floating sharks in ankle-deep water. That's a thing in that game, because the original game, there was no swimming. It was like Neverwinter Nights. You'll run into things like invisible walls and stuff. And even when you unlock flying, you have invisible walls if you go too high and invisible walls on the edge. So Final Fantasy is not as well designed for things like flying mounts as Blizzard did with World of Warcraft. Maybe Blizzard went too far in the other direction, where, like with Cataclysm, where you flew around on your flying mount and you really didn't do anything on the ground. But at least it was this whole thing where you just want to fly around. Go for it. As opposed to, I'm going to go fly across the continent. Oh, no, you're going to hit the invisible wall at the end. Or better yet, half of the world, which was never developed to be walked on, you can't even land on. You just float above it. So I want to take in the scenery on top of that mountaintop over by Gridania or something, or whatever. You land on it in the Shroud Forest. You can't even get off your flying mount. No, you can't even get off your flying mount because of limitations with the world design. So, and then there's, of course, the MMO Trinity. The MMO Trinity is just it's something that works. Tank, healer, DPS works. But it's something that I think we do just because it's worked before. And so you don't have any flexibility there. Part of that flexibility, though, is that if everybody, and this is something that these MMO developers really, when World of Warcraft kind of made it super popular with how popular the MMO got versus EverQuest and everything before, the MMO Trinity is something that people forgot with regards to Blizzard. The MMO Trinity is an issue because people seem to forget that WoW is based on an RTS. The original Warcraft games are real-time strategy games. One of the things you have in RTSs is unit balance. You're going to have units that are good against other units, not good against other units. Take infantry, for example. Take infantry, for example, in the Command and Conquer Red Alert series. Your infantry would be not good against tanks unless they garrisoned a building or something. The tanks couldn't do anything versus planes, and the planes were shot down by anti-aircraft guns and Tesla coils and stuff. Hey, the chat disconnected. Come on, YouTube, get your stuff together. We'll play catch up on that later, but I'll let you folks know when it pops back up, so I'll start seeing your messages again. But World of Warcraft was based on an RTS. Fixed units that need to have strengths and weaknesses in order for the RTS to not get too homogenous. But RPGs, people can be more fluid. You can have folks that have more jack of trades and whatnot. You don't need to fit a tank healer DPS stereotype. In ESO, hey, chat's back. Good, I'll see your messages again, folks. In ESO, you have the Trinity for forming groups, but the truth of the matter is you can switch to a Resto staff if the healer's no good, and you can throw on heavy armor if the tank's no good. And with certain add-ons, you can just change roles by clicking a button. It's not a situation where you have DPS that cannot sustain themselves, and so everything that goes wrong is the healer's fault, including if the DPS is standing in the wrong spot and gets cleaved. Or if the tank dies because they don't have enough defensive cooldowns left versus a tank buster. You have that freedom in ESO. You don't have it in WoW or Final Fantasy. So when I've made ESO into my main game with a more fluid Trinity, where, oh, the tank dropped group or the tank's an idiot who queued in DPS gear with only 18,000 health, and they're going to be squishy as all heck because they're not actually tanks. They're just people playing the queue system by saying they're a tank. Whatever, man. I'll just have my guy healing the run throw on heavy armor and tank while healing the group at the lower difficulty levels. Or maybe try the other way around. Have a tank character grab healing stuff because the healer can't keep up or something. But most importantly, everybody will probably have access to some sort of healing ability that if the healer's not keeping up, they just throw the healing ability on their bars. Every class, I use that term loosely because ESO's classes or templates, has something like that. Templars have Rushed Ceremony. Dragon Knights have have the fireball heal spell or the throw rocks heal spell, depending on what they're spec'd as. You know, the wardens have a mushroom spell if they have stamina, which is also some other spell if they have if they're magicka. You have options available, and if you don't have a very good heal spell with the class you're using, like if you're a Nightblade and all you have is the blood drain ability, no way to burst heal too much, you can always grab a resto staff, pick your least useful set of weapons, flip them out for a resto staff, and put grand healing on your bars or something. So you have options in ESO because the Trinity is more fluid. But in, say, Pugs in WoW or Final Fantasy, you are what you are. There's very little crossover. There's paladins that can cast Clemency a couple of times to throw a few emergency heals. But by and large, you know, I'll just say it, Final Fantasy players will immediately know what I'm talking about. And they'll know why it's a design oversight that people are furious about. Summoner Physic. The physics spell for summoners and scholars. The physics spell is completely useless on summoners. The amount it heals for, because it's based on the wrong stat when you level up to 70 or 80, the amount that it heals for is complete garbage. If you use it at all, you probably get laughed at. Versus the red mage who has Vercure they can double cast and throw a few thousand health onto somebody in a pinch. But otherwise, you have the classic problem with the MMO Trinity, where you finger point each other because it's someone else's job. And some people out there, you'll see this in workplaces too, not just in these MMOs. Some people out there look for what's called finger point points. Elements in the process that allow them to say, it's not my job, you're the one who's no good. This was a huge problem in Cataclysm when the healing was revamped on the World of Warcraft side. Huge, huge problem. Because healers could now run out of mana from too much avoidable damage, and then the party would wipe. This had to be, I think it had to be nerfed as well. But that was one of the biggest complaints about Cataclysm when it first came out. Was that all the bad groups and all the drama and stuff was amplified even more because you get a bunch of DPS not watching where they were standing in AoE abilities, and now the healer's out of mana. Oh, I guess you don't have enough mana. We're kicking you from the group, getting a healer with better gear. So that was the concern when everything first went live. There was even, of course, you know what? Let's see if it's still out there. Give me another browser. You want to talk about Blizzard hubris and why the crap that has been unearthed by these allegations of supposedly anyways, you know, why it's a symptom and not the problem. Why does Blizzard hate healers? It was an arrogant, snooty, it's still there from the launch of Cataclysm. It's a blog entry from Ghostcrawler of all people. November 19th, 2010. Why does Blizzard hate healers? So, the argument was technically correct. What it didn't take into account, and tell me if this sounds familiar, those of you that have been criticizing Blizzard, is that Blizzard seemed disconnected from the actions and the ideas of their players. The way their players behaved was something that seemed to be they were distant from. This made sense from an intellectual perspective and a game design perspective. But when you got into a group and you had some DPS not paying attention and standing in the fire, and they drained the healer's mana, and then everybody wiped because the healer ran out of mana, there you go. Where's the responsibility when you can just finger point? Now, maybe you would get a good group where the tank would call out the DPS as well, and somebody would call out the DPS, and the DPS wouldn't retaliate by, like, say, they're a hunter and they pull extra or something. They don't let the tank actually tank. Another thing I've seen in both games. But the Trinity is definitely, the MMO Trinity is definitely a thing that keeps me from really playing these games and enjoying them like I used to. It's an old idea. People forget that the MMO Trinity in World of Warcraft is because WoW is based on RTS games, where that was a necessity. Otherwise, what's the difference between this unit and that unit if there was no real difference in terms of what they were strong against and what they were weak against? But if you role play somebody, especially with some single player RPGs that are about overcoming a personal issue, like a fighter that can't fight a wizard in Seiken Densetsu 3 or something like that. Like if you play Duran's Quest in nowadays known as Trials of Mana, So the kind of overcoming a personal shortcoming story is perfectly fine for RPGs. How about Solstice, a puzzle game, an action puzzle game on the NES? Shadax, the Dark Sorcerer, whom my magic sorcerer in ESO is named after and styled after. The most ripped sorcerer in the history of video games. Look at the NES cartridge if you don't know what I'm talking about. A more powerful wizard has kidnapped a princess, and the only way he, can face down that wizard is to find a staff that's been shattered into pieces and hidden in some big castle of isometric blocks and stuff. I loved Solstice, by the way. Now, I wouldn't even play the game for real. I would just put a Game Genie Infinite Lives code on there and just explore, because back then, Solstice on the NES was the closest thing to a sandbox game in terms of that you had, relaxing, wander through a castle, occasionally be a little bit of goblin that would kill you if you touched it, but it was an action puzzle game. But hey, if you want to chill, it was a great chill game back in those days, back in the 8-bit era. So that's really the thing with this, though. But so this kind of idea of a character with a weakness, overcoming the weakness, be able to take on an enemy they otherwise couldn't take on, makes plenty of sense in an RPG, even if it doesn't make any sense in an RTS, for game balance reasons. And let me tell you something about World of Warcraft and the culture that sprung up around it. The amount of metagaming is hideous. I have to wonder if people even want to play the game to actually roleplay anymore, other than like fooling around in the Goldshire Inn on Moonguard or something. Or something like that. So, just the idea of, experiencing the world of Warcraft through some character with a story that you concoct in your head. You know what they're going to want to do. You know that the rogue might be a little bit of a sticky fingers. The paladin doesn't want to do anything illegal. And the priest reads tons of books about demons and shadow and light and stuff like that. No, that's the warlock that reads the demon books. The mage is the bookworm, etc., that kind of thing. And so, but if all you're ever talking about is min-maxing DPS meters and, the raids and things like that, that's why, I welcome this new idea of like world quests and stuff. So Blizzard at least is taking steps to getting away from their overemphasis on raiding. Because if you look at Final Fantasy, you can play it like a Final Fantasy game and just finish the stories. You don't have to raid at all. It'd be cool if you went in and tried out things like the Crystal Tower. But it's not the sort of thing where you're trying to get to the good stuff because everything before the raids is just filler material. No, everything before the raids is the game. MSQ, main story quest. It tells a story like a Final Fantasy game. And that's probably one of the things that draws a lot of WoW players, is because you need add-ons like Storyline to get this experience with WoW quests. But in Final Fantasy, it's basic to the game. There will be dialogue and cutscenes and things along those lines, rendered in-engine, of course. And so that's probably one of the draws too, because you get away from this hyper-competitive, get mad at everybody else that doesn't min-max as much as you do, and can actually immerse yourself in the world. ESO has that too, except for the Oblivion dialogue. Biggest problem I have with ESO. It's one of the things that makes it so boring to stream the story content in ESO is the Oblivion style dialogue, because of when the game started development versus Skyrim. So annoying. It's the character in like 1/3 of the screen following the rule of thirds, and they're talking, but you can read all the text on the side. I wish that could be real dialogue. It's just jarring. And I wish people could talk while they were doing stuff like they can in Skyrim, but unfortunately the development of ESO versus Skyrim was a little bit overlapping in that respect. But that's the thing. So let's see. Let's get back to the actual title of this to see. So in terms of Blizzardgate and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that Bobby Kotick brought down the hammer on all of this, but it's a corporate response, so we got to see what the follow-through is. We got to see what happens with the California case. Speaking of the court cases, there's an idea that I'm open to, don't know if it'll happen or not, but one of the biggest issues with trying to get some justice and whatnot for all those women who were mistreated at Blizzard. One of the biggest issues, and there's others too that are coming out of the woodwork now, but A lot of the big names being mentioned, like Alex Avraziabi, no longer with the company. Mike Morheim with the teary apology, I have failed you, left, started another company. There's been some very senior Blizzard talent that's been leaving. Some people are probably going to be like, huh, they just quietly left before any of this could surface. I'm sure some people are speculating that. It's not the most illogical thing in the world to wonder about at this point. But you know what I really like to see? I want to see J. Edgar, what am I saying here? J. Allen Brack. What was it? J. Edgar Hoover for some reason. What am I doing? Wrong guy with a questionable association there. But yeah, I want to see J. Allen Brack come out with some kind of not mopey dopey like that BlizzCon speech after the Blitzchung thing. I want to see him actually throw his weight around as a leader and say assertively and somewhat forcefully, this was wrong. It needs to change. I want him to see if it's anywhere near the tone of Bobby Kotick with this sort of thing. I'm glad that Bobby Kotick did write that letter about this is wrong. We're going to audit things, bring in the law firm and everything. It's going to change, da-da-da. I like that matter-of-fact tone. And I'd be very worried if that didn't happen, because if you have a subsidiary where this crap's going on as the parent company, you better step in. Throw your weight around in the matter. I was wondering when Activision would lower the boom on this. But J. Allen Brack should have something to his name at this point that is like that. Where is it? Now let's talk about the thing with the court case. The thing that I'm thinking about with the court case that could happen if there is a wall of sorts, and some folks like, say, Richard Hogue at the Virtual Legality Show has been talking about this too. There could be some situations where California is kind of hurting their case. And I'm thinking the references to Alex Avraziabi getting scrubbed from WoW, I wonder if some lawyers on the other side might try to interpret that as an admission of guilt of some sort. So I'm wondering if that might actually hurt their case. So it's good that, you know, they're actually trying to do the right thing in some respect. But you have to second guess that because it's corporate America. The reason why there's so much cynicism is because some companies get sued on purpose. It all comes down to the numbers. Take tabloids, for example. You get sued for damages for running a defamatory story about somebody. Defamation, the court sides with the accuser, you have to pay damages, but you're a tabloid, so the money you make from running the juicy story makes up for whatever you have to pay out in damages, and you still come out ahead. So I wonder about that with the attempts to rebuild the goodwill with the consumers that Blizzard has shown with some of the things they've been doing more recently, at least before the big employee walkout and stuff. But I don't know how many of you folks that are seeing this, both now and after the fact, were around for the O.J. Simpson trial in the 90s. But I remember it was a televised national spectacle of a criminal trial about murder charges. But O.J. Simpson was found not guilty in the criminal trial, and then a little while later, I was riding into school back in those days, and I heard O.J. was in court again. I was like, what? The trial's over. And then a bus driver was like, that's the civil suit. The family is suing for wrongful death. The evidence standards were different in civil versus criminal. He wound up losing that one, even though he was found not guilty with the criminal thing. There were other things that happened to him since then. It's an old story at this point. But I'm wondering, with regards to this Blizzard thing, especially if there's a few roadblocks to the justice that these victims are seeking, I'm wondering if there's some activist lawyers out there, and they do exist, by the way. They do exist. The ACLU is a great example of that, political activism from a bunch of lawyers, and many politicians are lawyers too, don't forget that. But I'm wondering if there's a group of lawyers that would want some publicity that would go after, from a civil perspective, damages from these ex-Blizzard employees who are being named in the California suit in a separate type of thing. Maybe they band together and they represent the victims or something like that, and there's a lawsuit filed directly against the folks who are mentioned in the California suit. I don't know how much that could overlap with what the state of California is doing and things along those lines. But knowing lawyers, I would not be surprised if someone was trying to figure out a way to make that work right now. It's people, ladies and gentlemen. If you can think of it, somebody out there is probably trying to do it. I can think of a group of people trying to file something else on behalf of the victims who were treated terribly at Blizzard, maybe even wrongful death for the one, for the worst of it. Those of you that have read the case know what I'm talking about here. But you have, I really, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if I found out that there were lawyers out there trying to make it happen. So whatever happens with California, the California thing, doesn't have to be the only part of the story. And even if it did the trial did fizzle, if it even went to trial, even if this whole thing did fizzle, it's not going to change anything about Blizzard and their, not just the way they treat their employees. And now the cat's out of the bag. They're known as a place that treats people badly. Until they fix that reputation, it's going to affect their ability to hire talent. What do you think that's going to do to Blizzard products? Especially if they want to return to Blizzard quality like in the olden days, if they can even still do so. What do you think that's going to do? Look, folks, when you hire a bunch of people as an employer, those people are who you depend on to get results. You could fire them, yeah, but you're going to be starting over and trying again and spending more money on onboarding and training and perhaps a wrongful termination suit or something. So as much as we like to imagine every boss in existence as a fat guy with a cigar and a top hat sitting there with their feet on the desk, ha ha ha, I'm going to fire you. It's not as simple as that, not in 21st century America. So the competitiveness. What happens to the competitiveness or lack thereof of Blizzard products if they don't patch up their reputation as a place to work? And what about everything that's happened up to this point? The stuff that made, back in the day, Total Biscuit quit the game when he felt like WoW had become a game that stooped to players instead of making players step up to the plate and get better in order to get rewards like gear and raid clears and stuff like that. That was Cataclysm. The video's still floating out there probably, I think, on his Total Halibut channel. Posthumously, all these years later, I'm sure it's still out there. What made Total Biscuit quit WoW? Or how about the time gating in Warlords of Draenor? How about the systems we started seeing in Legion and NBFA, where however you could feel like you did something in the world, in an RPG, lest we forget, would all go away at the end of the expansion. The artifact weapons, deprecated. Heart of Azeroth, deprecated. These things where, yeah, an expansion might have really good features, but you know they're going to be gone at the end of the expansion, so you can't really get into them. Then, of course, there's the controversies over the WoW token. But the WoW token has already previously existed in Guild Wars 2 going back to the game's launch. So an idea of trading in-game gold for some kind of cash shop currency and having an exchange rate and stuff, that's been in Guild Wars 2 since the beginning. I think the difference was what you could buy with the gems in the Guild Wars store and how that was limited or not versus what exists in WoW, where it basically is, sanctioned gold buying. And then people sell like runs through mythics and stuff like that. Stuff that would, like Mad Season very eloquently put it and very correctly put it, the only difference between that and a pay-to-win service directly through a third party in an unsanctioned site is that the WoW token is in the middle. You pay cash for the token, and then you pay the gold from the token in order to do something instead of actually putting in the time and effort and becoming a better player. Instead of downing the boss for real, you buy a carry. Or how about the ongoing problem with store mounts, where some of the store mounts look like something that should exist inside an expansion. You should have to do something cool to get that mount, but instead it's just fork over your credit card for the umpteenth time. The way Blizzard has handled, they're not the worst MMO when it comes to microtransactions. I think Neverwinter has actually had a worse time with microtransactions than World of Warcraft has at its worst. But it's all perspective. If you play lots of other games and you haven't been fixated and laser focused on WoW, you're less susceptible to the nonsense in either direction. You're less susceptible to criticizing WoW when you shouldn't, and you're less susceptible to falling for Blizzard's nonsense that can take advantage of stuff people don't know about other games. Like when they come up with a crappier version of something that already exists somewhere else, and WoW players think it's good. But anybody who's played the game that the idea is based on knows that it's not. but don't try bringing that up in the WoW forums, at least before all the hotheads went storming off to Final Fantasy to make that game worse. So yeah, I mean, people can view me as the villain for what I've chosen to do, but remember, folks, I'm an ESO guy. I'm an ESO guy. I don't have a horse in this race. If people want to bounce back and forth between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, depending on which game is ticking them off the most, it's not anything that hasn't existed before. But I think ESO has far better systems than both of them. Just, they could do better with the dialogue and the feeling of progressing towards some kind of goal, at least outside of the main, well, the main quests of the expansions are like that, but it's kind of like, say, you know, the main quest of Morrowind wasn't the biggest part of the game, but it told the story. When Asmongold criticized this with ESO, I often wondered about whether, you know, he realized that the offline Elder Scrolls games did this kind of stuff too. So yeah, I'm the weirdo that unsubbed from Final Fantasy and resubbed to WoW during these scandals, but it's all for very solid reasons, and ESO is my actual main game. You want to talk about whose team I'm on Team Elder Scrolls. No questions asked. But there's stuff that I have unfinished business in WoW, because I basically had Shadowlands sight unseen from when the game came out. And Final Fantasy, I'll probably go back to that at some point later on. I mean, I like Final Fantasy 14, but I don't want the game to be more dramaed up than it usually is, because you get all these angry WoW players determined to see no evil in Final Fantasy until they crack in a dungeon group and their personality comes roaring back. And I see stuff in Final Fantasy dungeon groups that I used to see in WoW groups many years ago. I'm not in a rush to go back to that. I mean, I'm from an environment where the MMO Trinity is more fluid and people aren't blaming the healer for nearly every single wipe, or, you know, dunking on tanks or something or whatnot because the dungeon runs not. Haha, you suck as a tank, because the dungeon runs not fast enough. So it's all about the context. If you know the context, everything makes sense. By and large, it's ESO that I'll be focusing on. And from a Final Fantasy perspective, the pixel remasters of 1, 2, and 3 are out. Based on the retro experience, I just toyed around with it just to see what it looked like with these new sprites and stuff. I could very well jump onto Twitch and start a gigantic Final Fantasy marathon from Final Fantasy 1. Now that it's on Steam via the pixel remasters, and play through all of that. Some good news for the Twitch streaming, by the way. I found the setting that I forgot about in OBS. Override streaming site settings. I don't want to be locked at $6,000 when I can on Twitch at 60 FPS. When I can do $9,000 on YouTube. The difference between Twitch streaming and YouTube streaming is a big technical one at 1080p 60, but considering because of the lack of evergreen support, I want the streams to come over to YouTube and be in my streams category over here, much like how a lot of Twitch streamers have their VOD channels and whatnot, except I don't want a separate channel because of the way YouTube works. Videos are evaluated individually, and I have my channel cataloged out so that if you don't want to watch streams, it's very easy to skip them. So it's the sort of thing where, you know, basically ignore my uploads list because even I don't use it. I have literally playlists for everything, and every time something comes onto my channel, I add it to videos, streams, or stuff from streams. I also have recently added my YouTube Shorts videos into their own playlists in a genre of their own. And if YouTube ever lets you put clips into your playlists on your channel, I want to have that available too. But it's all going to be on my channel page. I got to see how it looks on mobile, though. I don't want things to be too crowded, but on desktop, it's like an encyclopedia of stuff that I've worked on over the years on my YouTube channel. So, but it's not like I'm going to stay away from Final Fantasy forever. If the fad dies down a bit, I might try it again. I mean, it is a pretty nice game with some good music and lots of tie-ins to Final Fantasy. Right now, though, I don't see myself being really able to make too much progress because of my position within the MSQ, and plus the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters came out. I might want to try those out first, actually. Could do a giant marathon. 1, 2, 3. I have the 3D remake of 4. I have the remake of 5 and 6. And the Pixel remasters for those are in the works too. So I actually have duplicate Final Fantasy 3s now. I have the Pixel remaster one, and I have the 3D one that was originally on the Nintendo DS. Even the Ouya back in the day. So I have plenty of options for playing Final Fantasy games on some kind of stream that don't involve 14. But I do want to, I got to the point where Shadowlands could no longer be sight unseen for me. I want to get to the point where Shadowbringers is in the same boat as well. Let's look over the chat and everything too. So there is a method to my madness, and although I look like the worst person in the world for basically flipping the wrong games throughout this fiasco, there's a very solid reason for it. My reasons are very maverick and whatnot for doing this, but it makes sense if you consider the context and remember that I'm an ESO guy first. So ESO Blackwood is the MMO that I want to be playing right now. I'm actually halfway through the story. I want to get involved with that. Maybe even get more into ESO as well, because compared to WoW and FF, ESO, I don't think I've been spending enough time getting engrossed in Tamriel these days. Same with RuneScape. I'm doing fine. Call it time warp mode or level reset. So, Dan, your discussion about what I call time walker mode. Chromie time in Shadowlands is that, but you lose it at level 49. So I think it's the sort of thing, just like war mode in BFA, where you go from PvE to PvP server, you toggle it in your capital city. I think you should be able to toggle Time Walker mode and basically be able to Chromie time after level 49, because you have Guild Wars 2 with down leveling if you go back to an old zone. You have Elder Scrolls Online, where the whole world scales with you, so it kind of hurts the feeling of progression. You have Star Wars The Old Republic, which has down leveling when you go back. But if there was ever a game where it was optional, so you could either go one-shot everything because you're way past the level range, or you can go back and have it be somewhat challenging like in a down leveling game, but you choose just by talking to Chromie in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, that would actually be a design improvement over the other games that have down leveling, because you could choose what environment you want to be in. And Chromie time is phased. So if you're leveling through Chromie time, the folks in the main phase of the game that didn't turn it on are separate. Blizzard has everything they need to turn World of Warcraft into an environment where if you want to go back and play Lich King for a bit and not have it be a boring one-shot fest, you can do that. They just don't want to put two and two together. It's been saying this since before Shadowlands launched. This is a lost opportunity design-wise when other games are doing this, but WoW has the opportunity to one-up them, and they haven't. But seeing what we've seen from Blizzard and what has, come out in the allegations and whatnot, I can't say I'm surprised. So, yeah, Time Walker mode. Not to be confused with the Time Walking dungeon events, but with Chromie time, level lock your character at 49. All you do is change expansions to change dungeons in the Dungeon Finder. I want to run some Lich King one day, or how about Burning Crusade the other day, or how about Mists of Pandaria the other day? I mean, and the game that is level 49 and below is actually bigger than Shadowlands, because you got all that stuff. If you're a new player coming in, your first character, if you don't buy a boost, there is no level 49 boost either. But maybe Blizzard should make one. They certainly love to put everything else in that darn cash shop of theirs. But you come into the game with a new setup, 1 to 10 intro, 10 to 50 leveling expansion. It will be very possible for new WoW players, if there are any these days, it will be more than possible for new WoW players to only have experience in one expansion and wonder about the stories in the others. Or maybe they want to play them all in order or something and see what all the hubbub's been about for the past 15 years without leveling out of them in like 2 or 3 levels or whatever the initial, I think the default setup is like 4 levels or something in each expansion or something once you get past 10 in order to go through a little of everything. I don't know why you would do that. Pick a leveling expansion, go into Chromie time, and if you want to play something else, you have to freeze your level at 49 before you get booted out of it. Make sure to go back to the capital to do that. I don't think players should have to do that. I think you should be able to toggle that anytime. Okay, I got Shadowlands. Let's go into Shadowlands. Okay, I'm bored with Shadowlands. Let me go see why everybody says Lich King was so good. Let me go play Lich King. Oh crap, I need an alt. See what I mean? You could level to 10 and whatnot and only play and then lock your level, but why should you have to use the level locker NPC to freeze your experience just to have an experience in Warcraft, the World of Warcraft, that is similar to what you will get default in Tamriel, in Tyria, in the galaxy in Star Wars. Let's continue here. RuneScape, they had Legacy, but on RuneScape 3, and they had ability bars, so can't tell how popular it is. Saw the Goodman video. Played vanilla, and I liked it, not sure. I played vanilla up to level 40 and then got bored with the game. Of course, I was leveling as a holy paladin because I was an idiot. 200 of every stat, though, because I mixed my greens together. 200 strength, 200 agility, 200 stamina, 200 intellect, 200 spirit. Woo! Yeah, I was a moron. The equivalent of the Celestial gear in Guild Wars 2 that gives you a little of everything, but doesn't focus on anything. Undead Wizard. Some people just play the game. I was a boring human paladin. I was basically making my character based on my Morrowind character. And I was playing vanilla like Elder Scrolls. So I was a Morrowind guy, so just wandering around the world. I would go like run through Kalimdor and stuff, even though my guy was from Eastern Kingdoms, try to avoid the orcs in Duratar and the areas like that, the crossroads and stuff along those lines. RuneScape is like ESO. RuneScape has metagaming too. The thing with metagaming is that metagaming was something that got you banned from the Neverwinter Nights persistent world servers I played before I ever played any of these MMOs or Guild Wars or anything of that sort. So let's see here. I love the Oblivion memes. Yeah. Stop! You violated the law! Your stolen goods are forfeit! The most dramatic city guards in any RPG. And I dare anybody to try and change my mind on that one. What the ex-CEO said or whoever. That would be Mike Morheim. Very teary message and whatnot. Like the guy was serious. Yeah, well, the big thing I like is actually the current CEO, Bobby Kotick. That's the kind of response that should have come out a lot earlier. Matter of fact, things need to change. Put your foot down. But it is a corporate move because the biggest threat to Blizzard right now is not the California lawsuit. It's brand damage. We were talking earlier about how some of these WoW commentators that are moving away from World of Warcraft could be doing so because they know their views are going to drop. And WoW is declining in popularity, and the stuff Blizzard is doing, one of the side effects of that is that, WoW declines in popularity and your videos get less views because people are like, yeah, WoW, whatever. Blizzard was treating those women like crap. Their game was crap. All they care about is money. They sold out. Who cares? Except old guys like me doing nostalgia trips or something, like sending my character off to Grizzly Hills and just taking in the somewhat dated graphical scenery nowadays because we liked that zone in Lich King. I also liked Nagrand in Burning Crusade too. Nagrand was my original go there to chill out zone and enjoy the scenery. All right, go to Quell Danas or something, the island with the daily quests from Burning Crusade, which if you freeze your level at level 49, you get the gold rewards from max level over in Quell Danas, as though you were a max level Burning Crusade character. Little interesting thing there. Guy was serious. It's going to make them become worse, I believe. RuneScape has bonds, so I can relate. I think the WoW token and bonds are cope, but I like the idea with bonds can be used to buy membership. Now, the WoW token is you can use it for game time as well, but it's basically a gold buying service if you have a sub. So it's just an issue the game has a bit of a problem with inflation. You can make a bunch of gold just by doing the story quests and stuff like that too, but the idea here is the WoW token basically means you can buy literally anything. If it can be bought with gold, it can be bought with a token. So technically, by extension, it's bought with real money, and Blizzard profits off of it. I think WoW tokens... I don't know if WoW tokens do that. Played FFGBA. I actually have the Game Boy Advance Final Fantasies. I just never play them on my my DS Lite anymore. I'm going to get out of portable gaming. I got to sell my stuff to East Starland or something, or sell it on Facebook or something. There's zero reason for me to really need mobile gaming anymore because phones can do that nowadays, especially with peripherals. Hey, I hear a car starting up. It's 5:27 at the Geek House. I'm bumping up against the people getting up for day shift. Well, let's test the old noise filters here. Is it one of the folks with one of those Dodge Challengers and whatnot? For some reason, it's a weird midlife crisis mobile fad around here. I don't know why. Time mode, I think anytime. Chromie time at any time would be cool. Chromie time at any time exists in all the other games. You just can't toggle it on. The thing of Blizzard, wanting to, reassert dominance in MMOs. So instead of, and with their arrogance, why the heck didn't they do something like this? So they take an idea that they're normally sheepish about implementing from other games, and they find a way to one-up it by making it optional. So Time Walker mode is like war mode. You toggle it on and off in your capital city. And they make a version of this that's better than the competition. Can you imagine in today's environment, WoW being better than the competition like in days gone by? What a concept. With RuneScape, I just put on weaker armor. In vanilla, I would just play like I played RuneScape and stuff like that. Yeah, well, that's the situation here. Is I originally played old school WoW like it was an Elder Scrolls game. So when Elder Scrolls got its act together and stopped being such a WoW clone with ESO, I checked it out. When I first started playing Elder Scrolls Online in the mid-2010s, they still had the problem with the bots that would camp the delve bosses until that got patched up. So it didn't make any sense anymore. But in today's world, though, what about Classic, though? I mean, it's just the thing where Classic's a little contrived, but I still see a decent amount of players playing Burning Crusade Classic. They're just all in Outland. So I might actually check that. Well, the thing I want to do with Burning Crusade Classic, level up my Shockaden. The number one reason why I ever wanted to play BCC was to answer the what-if questions, because I ran out of time trying to make a Shockaden similar to Kosaga, the PvP video guy, in the original Burning Crusade. So, well, with my non-luck as usual, I would get to level 70 and probably start getting gear for this character. I'd probably have to PvP because the Arena Lameller gear was actually the best stuff for Shockadens. So I might be one of those weirdos like there was back in the days who's PvPing for progression gear in raid, or instead of raiding and stuff like that. So yeah, go, or actually no, well, Shockaden is a holy paladin anyway, so go in and heal raids and stuff like that. Old school RuneScape has a boatload of bots. Well, one of the unintended consequences is the bots that are buying the boosts, and they're going in and trying to make back the money of the boost by farming dungeons. So that's one of the things that there have been videos that have been surfacing with all that. But yeah, the only really World of Warcraft, it's a game that if you deal with unemployment, if you ever had to deal with unemployment, you might have encountered a little something called marginally attached workers. People that are only marginally attached to a workforce. So, or jobs or anything of that sort. When it comes to my WoW involvement, I'm a marginally attached player. I don't get the same enjoyment out of World of Warcraft that I got during Lich King, which was the height of my involvement. I was involved in guilds. I was raiding Ret Paladin and Blood Death Knight. I was raiding in Lich King. I had friends who played the game. I actually would have contacts on my friends list, and they were consistent contacts. We'd use Ventrilo, remember that? And we would use Ventrilo even when we weren't raiding, because we liked talking to each other so much. It got to the point where basically if you had to do the grindier stuff like your dailies or something, or you weren't doing something that required you to pay attention, you'd just be on Ventrilo talking with all the guildies all the time. It was really cool. And I was in numerous social guilds that had that going on. So, hey, anyone want to do a dungeon? Let's do the daily random normal or something. You get together and whatnot. There's even a dungeon run. Well, there was actually somebody I used to run dungeons with. He got his mom to play WoW. She didn't have any idea how to do any DPS, and she played a combat rogue. So they're my Ret Paladin was hitting 1,000 DPS with Naxxramas, and this guy's mom was doing 300 DPS as a rogue, which was terrible back then. But oh yeah, it's my mom. I'm gonna teach her how to play this someday. Yeah, well, we were hitting the enrage timer. So can mom sit this one out? I could probably do Violet Hold blindfolded because I got that dungeon so many times. I used to love the night music in a Howling Fjord as well. Very, very relaxing. The scenery in Grizzly Hills was awesome. But in terms of listening to the music, the nostalgia, it doesn't get any better for me than going to Howling Fjord at night. Because I remember when Lich King was a new thing and we were like, this is awesome. We're going to go after Arthas. You know, we're away from weird sci-fi clown armor and stuff like that. You know, it's back to swords and sorcery. And of course, Borean Tundra resembled a Burning Crusade zone a little bit more than Howling Fjord did. Howling Fjord had more better design in terms of being more immersive, if you could say that, back in 08. But you know, there's still some very serious nostalgia for me attached to the Howling Fjord music at night specifically, because that's when I would play. And, I was a day shift person then. So by the time I was grinding away in WoW at the end of the night, it was pretty much like 9, 10, 11 o'clock. So, and I was trying not to fall asleep or something, trying to just get by on 5 hours sleep going into work every day. So, because I want to play WoW at night. It's just like, yeah, wilder times, man. Wilder times. We do that in Discord. Discord's kind of a successor to Ventrilo, except they have the text-based communications, the phone thing, things like that. But I actually got booted out of my Discord on my stream logon because I haven't used it in a while because it doesn't start up automatically. I really don't know what happened to it on Monolith, my main computer here, because it's really the sort of thing that it used to work all the time. Now I have to actually open it. Now I'm not even logged in, so I got to do the thing with the QR code and stuff. So, yeah. All right, revisit the title. Yeah, Blizzardgate, we'll see what happens. I think I'll probably end up unsubbing from WoW at some point when I get bored again, just like every other time. But for now, it's a very chill experience, and it's made that way because of all the people that went storming off to Final Fantasy. So they took all the emotional baggage with them. It's a strange thing where something good comes out of an otherwise very, very bad situation. But I don't want anybody out there to think that I in any way support what these guys did on the job that they're getting called out for, because I absolutely don't. It's disgustingly, horrendously unprofessional. They would have gotten fired on the spot in most places I've worked in terms of big companies. I don't know if it's a thing with Blizzard and the gaming focus, but why does being into games have to make you into somebody who's abusive like that? It's one thing if you're hyper competitive in a first-person shooter, but those people that are working in the office with you, they're human beings with families, career aspirations. They're people. You got to respect them. And if you come from a culture that views, like, for example, women as prizes or whatever, yeah, I want to have the hot girlfriend or whatever, that sort of thing. One of the easiest ways to get past us versus them mentalities that dehumanize others is to find some common humanity with the other group. Find a YouTube video of like someone working on something around the house or something, or maybe doing something that doesn't fit their supposed traditional gender role right on the nose. So, and you'll see, like, at the core of all of this, we're all human beings. So if you can be insulted, they can be insulted. So don't insult them. If you can be disrespected, they can be disrespected, so don't disrespect them. And here's the thing. One of the things the allegations talk about is that the women were doing all the work anyways because the guys were playing Call of Duty. They'd bump off their tasks to the women in the office. But then it was a terrible environment for women, so they didn't get a chance to do their best work. So you could say, some of this played into what our experiences has been with WoW, but it's time for it to stop, not just Blizzard, but industry-wide. Why does working in video games, something where your customers are going to be using these things for recreational purposes or to relax, have to be the mess that it is? Why does the gaming industry have to be known for treating people badly? Not just, harassment like this, but scrum things, development cycles, burning people out, and then getting rid of them if they can't keep up. Why does working in the gaming industry have to be this way? I remember as a business school student, I was like, yeah, I'm heading towards the video game industry. I like video games. I want to work with video games. Didn't end up anywhere near the video game industry. I spent years wondering if I'd done something wrong, and then I found out what it's like to work at a video game company. And I was like, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea. Just one of those things. But indeed, we don't really need those. You could do something if you want to speak up for it and be an activist about it. Just as a content creator, the big thing is you don't want to come across as somebody who flips out about the tiniest little things. There are a couple of YouTubers I've run into who've done that. There's a couple of YouTubers I expect their views to tank because they look really unhinged because of how much they got. They went nuts in a video or they went nuts on Twitter or something along those lines. The truth of the matter is that this situation with Blizzard is so big, that even if you do nothing, you're probably going to get what you're looking for anyways. Even if you want to be lazy, you're probably going to get what you're looking for, because there, at some point, like we saw with Bobby Kotick's letter here, things have to change and get better. Even if the lawsuit doesn't go the way that people want it to do, you're talking brand damage. You're talking Blizzard's reputation. You're talking a potential need to rebrand the company if Blizzard is associated with bad stuff too much, and there's no way to fix this. You're talking an extinction level event, so to speak, for this company and the way it is run for the longest time. And you're also talking about a mountain of cognitive dissonance. What do we, the players, do with maybe prior to World of Warcraft? Maybe you played the Warcraft RTS games, or StarCraft, or Diablo. What do you do with that? How do you address your separating the artist from the art moment? It's ugly, but it's people. My stepmother says it so eloquently. It's all because of people. One thing that you can always count on people to do is that you can count on people to overcomplicate things and make you being like, why did they do this crap? And this is no exception. But given the state of WoW, can you be surprised? Given the crap that's gone on in the game for the last 10 plus years, can you be surprised? There's oftentimes there isn't that far of a gulf between people's behavior and their ideas. I mean, we're seeing this with the pandemic too. Ideas have consequences. You have the wrong ideas, that leads to bad stuff. And Blizzard has been no exception. So my future with WoW is this. Gotta play Shadowlands to see what I paid all that money for when the expansion came out. We'll play through the story. I'm not going to get caught up in some stupid little time sink, though, at max level. If Blizzard's pulling Warlords of Draenor-style stuff with things like that, I'll go back to ESO. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to leave ESO. I'm playing it in between all of this. I have lots of stuff to play, though. I don't need to play a game that messes with my conscience. Because, number one, scandals at the company. Number two, problems with design that probably you're not surprised that are the reason why I'm not surprised there are scandals at the company. Because I know the behavior of the brass has had its problems over the years. But no. World of Warcraft was one thing to me in the 2000s and the 2010s. It'll be something completely different in the 2020s, even if Blizzard does what's called in corporate America a course correction and does the right thing. Because doing the right thing with what's going on at Blizzard and what's in these allegations, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That would do absolutely nothing about what has led WoW into the position that it's in nowadays. So even if Blizzard does everything right, it would need to just be the beginning. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.